chat with Patrice just before I started, just before I got here, after we were doing some interviews with the press. And when you think about it, really, there's no truth in game design. There's no hard rules. There's nothing you can learn that is just, oh, you just do this and now you made a successful game. You can only learn from experience, from trying, from failing, and from others. So for all of those who walked away, don't forget to laugh at them next time you go to class, because they just maybe messed up an opportunity in the industry. Let's see if my screen works. Otherwise, I'm just going to give a presentation without slides. I can do that. Is it the? Does anybody have a MacBook dongle? No? Okay. Some more questions. How many of you are want to be AAA developers when they grow up, when they go into the industry? Okay. How many of you want to go indie? How many of you don't care? Yeah. So, a few AAA, half of you want to go indie, and half of you just want to make money at some point and not die making video games. That's about right. Pay rent, survive. Yeah, pretty good place to be. I wanted to be a AAA developer when I was younger, mostly because those are the games I played, right? Like I really wanted to be a AAA, and I went to university actually. I've been making games since I was 6, actually, like since I was very little. And I say making games, but really what I mean is like I changed the line of code in MS-DOS, and then the game was different. I was like, that's cool. I'm going to keep doing that for the rest of my life. That is actually what happened. And then I went to university, but by that point I'd already worked on 2 or 3 commercial games. So when I got to university, it didn't really work for me. So skip this part of my talk. That's not advice. We dropped out, and because I didn't have any papers and I didn't graduate, and I didn't have a job and no money. My co-founder's really good at starting games, and I'm really good at finishing games. So we said, well, I don't like you and you don't like me, but maybe we can work together and make some games, earn some money, and then hopefully if we're not dead in 3 years, then we can just quit doing that because we don't like each other, and then just do what we want. So I was going to go into AAA, but then I liked working with that guy so much, and the games we made were so good that both of us decided to keep doing it, and that's why I'm still Vlambeer. So, you know, it's good to have goals, but the reality of the games industry is that any goal that is further than 3 years out is pretty much a question mark anyway. Like, 3 years ago, VR was not a subject, right? That happened in the last 3 years, and now people are talking about it, and HoloLens and AR, and the possibilities within games, and the new paradigms that we've learned. And that happened in like 3 years. Twitch, which I just heard a question about. I remember one of the most important people at Twitch right now, somebody who is extremely powerful in the games industry. I remember them coming to me at PAX 5 years ago at the Penny Arcade Expo, asking me for free game copies because they were just in TV and nobody cared about them, so they needed content. So they were going around PAX asking developers for free copies of their game for their streamers to play. Now you can't imagine it anymore because, come on, it's Twitch. Like, you would happily send 100 copies of your games to big Twitch streamers if you could. Back then it barely existed. So whatever your plan is, really, like, be a little adaptable, be a little flexible. It helps in this industry. Because plans just never really work out. Like, for some people they do, but for most people there's a lot of trying to figure out what to do in the meanwhile. So am I going to do this without slides? Wow. Yeah, okay, that's fair. That's fair. I can do that. Okay. Yeah, I'm okay with it. I'll just walk back and forth. This is good because I have a step counter, so now it'll look like I was active all day. It's good. Helps. Yeah, I have a little Q&A section at the end of this, but I guess, does anybody have any questions before we start? The idea for Nuclear Throne. So who here knows Nuclear Throne? Okay, enough. So it's a top-down action roguelike. Also, that's real cool that you all know my game. It's a little top-down action roguelike that was released on Steam, PlayStation 4, PlayStation Vita, Mac, Linux. It's a really fast game about a bunch of mutants in a post-apocalyptic world, and the idea came from 3 spots. First, we've been trying to make a roguelike since like 2012. And the problem that we had was that we would procedurally generate the level, and there would be a door at the end of the level, and then players would have to fight their way through all the enemies to get to the door, right? And it turns out that what players did instead is they just ran past the enemies and ran for the door. So we tried to make that game, and it sucked, and we canceled it. We actually changed the second attempt of that game into a first-person shooter. So it was a top-down roguelike, and then we switched it to a first-person shooter called Gun Gods, which we released in 2013. And then JW, my co-founder, came to me one day and said, I fixed it, I figured it out. And what he did is the door, instead of being somewhere in the level, he said the door appears where you kill the last enemy. So until you kill the last enemy, there is no door. And now players had to fight all the enemies, and then the game was fun all of a sudden. So that was one. The second inspiration was that we really hate modern sci-fi. We really, like old sci-fi, we're like huge fans of like 70s sci-fi, you know, like the kind of like, well, 60s, 70s. The kind of sci-fi where we hadn't been to Venus, you know, we hadn't sent like a probe to Venus to check what it looks like, so we just thought there were dinosaurs and Tarzan and shit. Like, that's cool sci-fi. There's like imagination and like hopeful, and we were gonna reach all these planets, and nowadays sci-fi is all like, humanity is at the brink of destruction, and fucking Matthew McConaughey is gonna go into space and save us or something. And like, I don't care. Like, I know the world is fucked up, and I know things aren't going well, and I know there's global warming and famine. What? The charger. I do have a charger. Does that mean we have screen? Okay, I'll try. Otherwise, if you have a different laptop, I can just put my presentation on somebody else's laptop. That works too. Oh, cool. So we wanted to make it, you know, when the story is humanity is at the brink of destruction, you almost always get a boring story about saving humanity. We said, let's just fucking kill humanity. So we started with humanity is dead, and then wrote the game from there. And that was really fun. And I think the third inspiration is we really wanted to make a game that will be fun for us to play. So you know how a lot of people say, like, yeah, we make the games we want to play? I say, fuck that. Like, if you make the games you want to play, you're the only person in the world who can't play it. Because you made it. So you know everything about it. It's not exciting, it's not interesting, it's just, you're playing a buggy piece of software and you know every bug in it. Which is incredibly frustrating. You already know where the story is going to go, you already know the most powerful weapon you're going to find, you already know the best skill you're going to have. In fact, the best skill, which is super awesome to everybody, you're probably just upset about that you couldn't put enough particles in to make it really badass. I don't make the games I want to play. Like, I like let other people make those, because then I can play them, which is cool. We make games that we like to make. And for Nuclear Throne, the main thing that we tried is to make a game that would still be interesting to us to play, and that's why it ended up a roguelike, because even we don't know what's going to happen. And that worked out pretty well. I still play Nuclear Throne every now and then, but those were sort of like the 3 things that merged into Nuclear Throne. Yeah, change the computer, that's fine. Yeah, how do I send it? Wait, I'm still talking to the microphone. You'll see that the moment we send the presentation, the screen will start working. That's how it always goes. It's a game development truth. As soon as you give up, you fix it. I don't have an Android. I don't have a stick. Does anybody have a USB stick? Just a small USB stick that I can put a presentation on. Yeah? Here, there we go. Plus a free copy of a build of a video game, I guess. Such professionals in this industry. Could do this. Oh yeah, there's indeed a video game on that. Who would have thought? It's good. I would have been disappointed if there was nothing on here, to be honest. And it's saved. Yeah. Anyway, any other questions? I guess we still have like a minute. Yeah? What? Oh, the difficulty. We just make it up. Yeah, difficulty is like pricing. Like nobody really knows. You just kind of keep guessing until it works. For Nuclear Throne, we set the difficulty to be doable for JW and hard for me. I like to think I'm pretty good at video games, but at the specific type of arcade game that we tend to make, JW is better than me. So we make it so that JW can get through it with a little bit of practice, right? And that I have a hard time. And then we put the final boss there. And then usually if there's post-ending content, we make it just too hard for both of us. Like for Nuclear Throne, we even have enemies that were supposed to be unbeatable. Like we just did everything we could to make them completely unbeatable. If you kill them, they respawn after 20 seconds. They have ridiculous amount of health. They shoot bullets in every direction. They have unpredictable patterns, and people just wreck them anyway. So difficulty is one of those things that it's more of a feeling than a science in many ways. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't, you know, balance the numbers, but like in the end, it's all about feel. And you have to remember that difficulty is relative. Like it starts at a point relative to your player's ability to play. Oh, hey. Those work. Nice. Wow. Future's here. The future in which we take 35 minutes to set up a screen. That's the thing about the future I don't like. I have like a smart house with like smart lights. I came home the other day, my lights didn't work because they needed an update. I'm like, what the fuck? Everything is better if it needs updating. Yay! Can I? No, I'm using this mic. Okay. I was answering a question. Oh yeah, difficulty. Don't forget, difficulty is relative, right? We like to think of it as like a hard science that has like a thing that is like easy difficulty, normal difficulty, hard difficulty. It's all bullshit. Like I'll actually talk about that later. Everything about video games is bullshit, but that's not the point. That's actually why it's a wonderful medium to work in. Let's start. How many of you have read the games news today? 4 of you. You're working in this industry, for fuck's sake. Read the fucking news. Who's Ben Braid? Nobody knows Ben Braid? Who knows Hearthstone? Yeah. What? Sure. Blizzard, right? He left. Does anybody know why? No, we don't. Firewatch? What's the Firewatch news? What do we think about that? If you're all fighting about it, that's good. What happened in the Netherlands? The Netherlands filed some regulation against loot boxes. What is the defining legislation? What is the point that they're upset about? The problem is that if you can trade items between players and the way you attract that item is through chance, it is gambling, and gambling is illegal in the Netherlands unless done by certified companies, which there are not many of. How many of the games in the Netherlands will be affected by that? Free-to-play games. 4 out of 10, apparently. They have 2 months to fix it. What happened to Don't Nod, the creators of Life is Strange? They are preparing to go public in the European Union. They made $9.7 million of revenue, and they thought they would try going public. What is Tencent? Who knows Tencent? Raise your hand. Okay, if you don't know Tencent, they probably own you in some way. 40% of all money invested in video games was Tencent's money. They even bought a little bit of Ubisoft recently, after Vivendi tried to do it for forever. That's the news. This is our industry. If you want to work in the industry, and you want to get into the industry, it's probably good to know what is happening and where shit is happening, because it's not just a medium, it's also an industry. If you're here just to make art, you do you. Don't care about the business, make stuff, I applaud you. If you want to be in this industry, you want to get into this industry, knowing what is happening in the industry should be a base level. If you've been in the industry for as long as Patrice has, I don't know if he still cares about reading the games news every day. You do? There we go. But if you're new to this industry, if you're entering this industry, if that is not like your start page on your browser or something, fix it. Because you know where you find opportunities? In the news. You know where you hear about events? In the news. You know where you hear about what things might be happening that might affect you? It's in the news. Ubisoft just did their second incubator season. There's a lot of companies looking for independent developers to make new content, looking to fund them. Where do they announce it? Gamesindustry.biz, Gamasutra, still the worst named website in the world. A lot of places that you could just check every day to start. Because here's the truth about video games. Who knows this photo? So this is the landing at Iwo Jima. It's a photo by a guy named Joe Rosenthal. It is considered the most recognizable photo in the world. A lot of people know this photo, or at least know kind of this photo, or have seen something like this photo. So you would say that Joe Rosenthal got rich off of this photo, right? Most recognizable photo in the world. How much do you think he earned in total? It's after adjusting for inflation, it's $4,200 plus $1,000 in prize money because he won a prize with the photo, and $700 for interviews. That's what he reported. Here's the thing: if I grab my phone right now and I point it at you and I press the button, I've taken a photo, right? And all of you can do that. Now, if I would practice a lot with it, I could take a good photo, right? If I practice a lot with it and work really hard to make a website, I have a Spanish error message on my screen. If I worked really hard, I made a website, I promoted myself, I made sure that my best photos were in my portfolio. I might even made some money making photos, right? But if I want to make this a job, if I really, really want to make this a job, if I want to earn a living making photography, that's really hard. Only a tiny percentage of the people that can take photos will ever earn enough money to make a living. Now, I have good news and I have bad news. The good news is making video games is still a little bit harder than making a photo. It takes a little bit more work, takes a little bit more discipline, takes a little bit more knowledge and expertise and practice. I have bad news for you as well. We're not that far away. In fact, if you have a computer, you have internet, you have a little bit of access, you could sit down not knowing anything about video games and make your first video game tomorrow. It won't be a good video game, just like my photo here would not be a good photo, but it would be a video game. So, if I have to be honest, of the people here in this room, there's a pretty large number that probably won't make it into the games industry, not immediately or not at all. And for some of you, that might actually be the better option. For some of you, while doing this, you might learn that you're actually much more of a programmer and you want to work for like an IBM or a big programming company. Or you might find that you're more of an artist, more of a structural artist. Maybe you like architecture and you end up being an architect. Or maybe, you figure out that this entire games industry, fuck this shit, and you're out of here. In which case, also fine. Life takes us in many directions. But I'm here to talk to you a little bit about the people who just left between those two talks. Because the truth is, one of the easiest ways to make things a little easier, not a guarantee that it'll work out, but just a little easier, is to get as much knowledge as you can and to practice as much as you can. Because here's the thing. Has anybody seen this thing? Yeah? Just raise of hands, please, just so I know. Okay, this is called a Dunning-Kruger curve, and it's a rendition of a theory by two psychologists. So I'm really bad at playing music. I like music. I can work with musicians. I've never really picked up an instrument. I play a little bit of piano. I've been practicing with guitar. Now here's the thing. When I picked up a guitar for the first time, I didn't even know which side was up. I didn't know how to hold it. I didn't know what side, how, where do I put my fingers. So when you start to practice something, you know that you know nothing about it, and you know that you know nothing about it, right? Then you look at the tabs to a song that's pretty easy, probably something Oasis or something, and then you start practicing that with just a fucking YouTube tutorial, right? And after like a day or two, day or three, like a few days of practice, it's like Guitar Hero in the end. You can kind of play it and you think, oh shit, I'm pretty good, right? Now this is what you actually know, and this is what you think you know. Now as that goes, for a while, you'll keep thinking that you're getting better much faster than you're actually getting better. Because you don't know what you don't know yet. You only know what you do know. You're comparing it to some sort of weird 100% that doesn't really exist. At some point, you try to practice your second song, your third song, or your fourth song, and you pick an actually hard song because you're overconfident. You know what happens? You realize, fuck, I am bad at this shit. So you drop. At some point, you even drop under how much you actually know. Because you start to understand that there's so much out there that you don't know, that you will never know, that would take years of practice just to get that good. You end up under. And then as you grow and you gain expertise in a field, you will get pretty close to being exactly where you are. You never quite get there, but you'll get a pretty good understanding of how much you actually know. Now, we have a bunch of names for this. This is called Impostor Syndrome. The effect that you think everybody around you is actually better, but they just haven't found out about yet. I can guarantee you most of us in this room have that. I have that. I have no idea why you're listening to me. But hey, thanks. And without offense, this part is the part I wanted to talk about. There's no real name for it. Most people call it Mount Stupid. I don't really like that name, but youthful overconfidence, right? Or naive overconfidence. I'm going to guess that all of you are here because you're students. How many of you have finished a game and shipped it? Thanks, Patrice. So, if you haven't shipped a game, you're definitely here. It's not a bad place to be. Naivety is not a bad thing. Sometimes I'm jealous of everybody who hasn't learned all the random information I have, because you can make choices that I would never make anymore. But I want to test if I'm right about this, so I'm just going to ask you a few things to just kind of drive home the point I'm trying to make. Who knows this thing? Of course you do. This is Ralph Koster from his model of how a game works. Can you kind of read it? So this is how he says a game works. So you will notice that there's no game and there's no player in this, but there kind of are. This is the black box, right? This is the game. This is the mental model. That's the player, right? So to explain what a mental model is really quickly, if you boot up a game, right? You boot up a game, and the logo of the studio appears on the screen. 90% of us will press a button to skip the logo, right? Is there anybody here who watches all the fucking logos? Option 1, it skips. Our mental model updates, you can skip these things, right? Number 2, nothing happens. Then we might press the button 3 or 4 more times, and we might try holding it. That updates our mental model. Now, when you're playing a game, that's continuously happening. So this is happening all the time while a game is being played. You have the black box, which is the game, but that's not where we start. We start with the player. The player boots up the game, and when the player gets into the game, they already have an expectation of what the game is. They've seen your marketing, they've seen your promotion, they've seen your store page. They're not going in blind. They've played games in the same genre. They have a certain idea of what it is they're going to get. So they start with their mental model. They boot up the game, which is here, the input, right? The game starts up, so now the black box is on. And the black box updates the state of the game, so your delta, every frame, your game updates, right? It gives feedback to the player through what? Through screen, through audio, through rumble, through all sorts of stuff. And then all that information updates the mental model of the player, just to go back. Now in the main menu, that's not very interesting, but in the main game, every frame, between frames even, the player is updating. They know of the state. Is there an enemy near me? Is there a cover? Is there something I want to grab? Is there an item? How valuable is this item? How much is this item? Is this better than what I have? Should I run this way? Should I run left? Does this look scary? Does this not look scary? This is continuously happening, continuously. Now, for a lot of people, they think the game is here. The game is there. There's nothing here. This is just our shit. This is what we trick the player into believing so that their mental model plays the game. The game itself is just a little tool. So if you're designing for this shit, you're doing it very wrong. That's what you should be aiming for. The player, the brain of the player. And there's a lot of great examples of this. How many of you have a game in which there's a random chance for something? How many of you just use a random roll for that? Random something. What else do you do? What else could you do? For Vlambeer games, if we have a random, you know what we do? We roll a random off of a random. So we do random, random. You know why? It adjusts the normal distribution from being basically that to being more of a this for the values. Seed, it's how seeds work in computers. It's a weird thing. But it turns out that people, when they have a random, they expect it to fall near the center. If I have a chance of 0 to 100, if you don't get around 50 most of the time, people feel the random is off. Or if I say 10% chance, right, you have a 10% chance. How often do I have to roll to be sure that I get that item? Anybody? No. You don't. You will never know whether you're sure. It's 10%. You can roll 1,000,000 times and not get it, right? Because it's just 10%. It means 1 in 10. It doesn't mean that 10 times means you get it. Now, the weird thing is our brains like to think that's true. So for a lot of games, when we say 10%, it might be a good idea to program a thing that says after 15 rolls, just give the fucking thing already. Because if not, people will be upset that the random doesn't work. They'll tell you the game is broken. Or for a platformer, if I run off this ledge and I jump a second too late, my game will give you the jump as if you were still on the ledge. Call it coyote time. Because even though that's correct, I should fall, it's not fun. It feels shit. Our hitboxes for our players are about 5 to 10% smaller than the actual sprite. So it looks more like the bullets just missed you, which makes you feel good. Nobody can see where the 2 fucking pixels hit. Nobody can see that. But we can give it to the player just because they have a little bit more fun, right? Just because they feel better. Or a lot of first-person shooters or action games, the last bar of health, the last bit of health is actually worth twice as much. So that you feel like you recovered, you did well. Wow, close save. Soccer games, FIFA. The goalie is actually worse in the last 5 minutes of the game, just so there's more goals. That's like an actual design thing, because why not? Or if something shoots at you from behind. A lot of games make the first bullet miss, so that you see the bullet, so you know somebody's shooting at you. Instead of giving you a hit point instead of giving you a damage indicator behind you, just make the first bullet miss, so you can turn around. It feels way cooler to shoot somebody who missed you than to shoot somebody who shot you in the back. All of that is because the game isn't happening here. The game doesn't have to be fair. It doesn't have to be fair. It has to feel fair. It has to feel right. Now, another one that I thought was really interesting. This is by Zach Gage. Who's played this game? It's called Into the Breach. I think it's one of the best designed games in years. So Zach argues that this game is super complicated, but still very readable. He calls it subway legibility, the ability to read the game if you were watching it being played by somebody in front of you in the subway. So you're not even playing, you're just watching, right? He says, what does this tell you? What does this tell you? It's a grid-based game, right? There's units on it, so it's probably some sort of strategy thing, right? Does anybody think it's not a strategy game? No, we all agree that it's probably a strategy game? Okay. So on the second read, if you look a little bit closer, there's these 3 portraits here, which might be units. There's an end turn button, so it's definitely a turn-based game, right? Definitely turn-based. It says enemy routed in 4 turns, so in 4 turns, I guess you win, maybe? There's a ground tile which has no special effects, which means that some tiles do have special effects, right? There's an artillery mech, and something about turn over and a bunch of buttons here. So that's some additional information. Oh, there's a little health bar, so I guess units have health. There's this thing called a power grid, which I don't know what the fuck that is. And then on your third read, when you're really looking, you're seeing these red things that seem like enemies are pointing at them. So I guess enemies telegraph. There's some additional objectives. Protect the time pod. So I guess there's something called a time pod. That's pretty cool. There's some units here that are related to these portraits. So I guess there's pilots and mechs, and they are related somehow. There's a button that says undo move. Okay, percentages, a bunch of other information. Now the thing is, if you just glance at the game, this is what you see, and you have a pretty good idea of what it is, right? This is what you're getting. This is the game you're getting. This is the information you need to play. This is the information you need to play well. And Zach argues that if you design that way, what pulls you in your main narrative stuff and your bonus stuff, if you design your interface, your communication in such a way that that is the order in which players read, you can make a game that doesn't really need a tutorial all that much, which in today, 2018, the year of Twitch, 90% of people don't play the tutorial because they're watching somebody else play. They never see the tutorial. In fact, it's very likely that the streamer has already played the tutorial before they start streaming. So if you want a game that communicates well, build a game so that somebody who's watching somebody randomly play on Twitch understands what it is and why it is fun. If you're making a game without that in mind, you're losing out on a lot of people who would play or love your game. Anybody know these things? I'm not even going to spend too much time on these. These are player archetypes. There's a lot of discussion about what player archetypes exist. There's two main models. There's Richard Bartles and David Kersey. Basically, they argue that players have different reasons to play. Some people want to change. They want to change stuff like the players. Some people want the structure, like the world. Some people play to interact, so to interact with other things. And some people play to act, so to pretend they're in the game. Everybody has different reasons to play. Some people play to get the high score. Some people play because they want to see the world. Some people play because they care about the characters. Some people play because they want to get good at something. Being a little aware of what you're building and for who can help you focus. And you have to realize that whatever you're making is never just in one of these corners. It's always a little cloud. And you have to be aware of that cloud a little so you can think about what they want, how they want it. For a lot of designers, this kind of comes natural from having years or decades of experience doing that. But if you're new, that might be useful. How many of you here are designers? How many of you are programmers? How many of you know this game? This is Lucas Pope's Obra Dinn. It's a one-bit game with a beautiful art style. Now, here's a problem. This is a boat. Can you see? Is that clear from a little bit backwards? It's on a boat. It's one bit. It's a really striking art style. What's cool about it is it's a ship, so it's moving. And one of the things he wanted a cool movement effect on the ropes. There's some ropes hanging around. He wanted stuff like this to move well. But he also wanted to give the ship a little bit of a feel of movement all the time. So he tried some stuff. He tried this. He randomly shifted all the pixels around. I think we can all agree this is not very good, right? Now Lucas is a programmer, so he decided some other things. He decided maybe I can break the screen into segments and then offset those segments. You can kind of see that here and over here, right? He tried doing that, but it really looks like a post-processing effect, right? It breaks a lot of direct lines that would otherwise, like, what is happening here? This wouldn't play, like, what? Or like here, this one goes left all of a sudden. He didn't like that either. You want to know how this very good programmer, I might say, fixed this problem? Okay, so he drew a maze, okay? And then you can turn any maze into something called a unicursal maze, which is a maze that you just walk through. You know how you do that? You have to find a solution for the maze that goes through every square of the field. And you know how you do that? As a programmer, just hug the left wall. You go through the entire maze, just sticking to the left. And then eventually you have gone through every space in the maze and found the exit. Now, if you take that solution and make that the new maze, you get a maze that you can go through in one go, right? I don't know how he knew that, but he knew that. And because he knew that, he could implement it. And when he implemented it, he then offset the pixels by that, which was better, but still not good. So instead of using the entire screen size, he actually used a small portion of the screen size, then scaled that up to the full screen size, and then fixed all the weird corners. Like here, you know, this should not look like that. So he's going to turn this one yellow so that that corner is a little bit cleaner. So then you get this. And if you have that, you can make an animation of how that would move. If you scale it by 5, it looks like that. And now if you offset each of those colors by a different amount, like -1 for blue, +1 for pink, stuff like that, you get this. Which he concluded isn't good, so he canceled it. He's not using any of this. That's a programmer that you are competing with as programmers. Also, you're competing with Raf if you're a designer. If you're an artist, you're competing with Jane, who created this beautiful art for their character Zora from Into the Valley of Gods. And this is actually a fun one. It turns out that nobody in video games have really made hair like that ever before. Says a lot about what characters our industry makes, I'm afraid. Hair like that moves like this. And research to work on the art for this, so that eventually they could render hair like that. So this is how serious Jane takes her art, her visual style, right? If you're an artist, you're competing with this. How many of you do sound? One person. Good on you. You know how important audio is for a game? You know that it has often been said that audio is the most direct way into players' emotions, to a player's brain. There's actually a good story that I like to tell about that. Have you ever played like a versus first-person shooter? Team-based, right? 2 teams. A friend of mine used to work on this really big multiplayer shooter game. It was asymmetrical, so you had 2 teams. Those 2 teams have different weapons, different skills, different abilities. The thing is, in the spreadsheets, in the data, there was a machine gun for the one team and a burst rifle for the other team. In the numbers, those weapons should be identical. They should do the same damage output per second, right? Even though one is burst and one is machine. But when they were playtesting it, they were finding that the one side, the side with the burst weapon, was getting way more points. Way more points. So they asked one of their designers to figure out what was happening. So he watched hours and hours of playtest footage to figure out. He went and threw more playtests to figure out what was happening. And you know what ended up being the fix? So the burst rifle sounded like the machine gun sounded like the people with the burst rifle were being way more aggressive because their gun sounded more powerful. And the way they fixed it was by adding a shit ton of bass to their machine gun. And then it evened out. That's how important sound is. If you are working on a game and you're not thinking about sound straight from the start, you're making a mistake. If you are an audio designer, this is the kind of thinking you're competing with. Now, what I'm kind of trying to say is, in many ways, you don't stand a chance in this industry. Now, what I don't want to say is that you shouldn't try. Because there is opportunity, there is place, there is a job. But it's not going to come easy. And it's not going to come from just doing the assignments you get at school. It's not going to come from just doing the things you have to. It's going to come from everything else that you do outside of that. It's going to come from the game jams you were attending. It's going to come from the talks you listen to. It's going to come from the speeches you go to, the events you visit, the contacts you make, the business cards you hand out. How many of you here have business cards today? Everybody else, why not? There's two people here that work in this industry that if you do good work, if you're interesting, would love to have your contact information. Now we won't, because you didn't bring a card. If you're making a game, how many of you here are going to make a game, like commercial games, are going to really try to make a big game soon? Have you thought about your budget? Yeah, how big is your budget? Somebody? Anybody? Is it under 100,000? Everybody under 100,000? How many people are working on your game? The people who said 100,000. 5? How long are you going to work on the game? 8 months, 5 people. 3 months? Okay. Is that going to be enough? Are you going to pay yourself salary? To start now? Okay. How are you going to keep doing this? Yeah. Okay. Are you going to do any events, promotion, marketing? Yeah? A percentage? Do you know the percentage? Mm-hmm. Would be good to know it before you make your budget, right? Yeah. Budget is hard. It's difficult. Thanks for answering those questions, by the way. It's difficult. It's hard. You're talking about salary. You're talking about income. You're talking about events. Does anybody know what a booth costs at PAX? Way too much? That's not a number, though. If I could pay way too much, that'd be great, but that's not a... Sorry? 2,500. About 2,500 just for the booth space or with the booth in there? Yeah, just 2,500 for the mega booth. Do you have a TV then? Do you have a TV then? Do you have laptops? Okay. Yeah. So 2,500 just for the space, then the TVs, the computers, stuff like that, that gets added. Marketing, if you want to do marketing, that costs money. Salary costs money. Delays cost money. You know what else costs money? The 3 months after you release your game. You know why they cost money? You don't get paid in the first 3 months. Even if your game is a monster hit, Steam takes about 3 months to pay you your money. PlayStation takes about 3 months to pay you money. Xbox takes about 3 months to take your money. You know how many indie studios I've seen not make it because of shit like this? Where like small teams disbanded over like 3 to 6 months of money just because they didn't budget right? You know what's a bad thing to budget on? Is like when your programmers say it'll take about 8 or 3 months. You know why? Programmers suck at time estimates. I'm a programmer. If I say 3 weeks, I might as well mean like 2 months. I might mean 6 months. I might mean I never get it done. I might mean it will be done in 20 minutes. I have no idea. None of us have any idea. So if you budget, whatever your budget is, you probably need 50% on top of that. Probably more, to be honest, to be safe. Extra money is never bad. How many of you are working in a team right now? A lot of you game jammed this week, right? How big was your team? 6, 5, 6, something like that? 3? 3 is nice. So if you have no money, you have no investor, and you have nobody who's putting money behind you, 6 people, tell me what those 6 people do. You have a programmer, you have an artist, another artist, audio, designer, producer. Okay. So you know the difference between 3 and 6 people? 6 people cost twice as much. That's the main thing. If you are starting out and you have no money backing you, you have to make sure your team is exactly the size you need and not a person more. If you have money, you have your team, you want your team to be still as small as it can be to do the thing you want. Because there's no use in having people that'll just be sitting around. I think Patrice referred to that earlier in his talk when he said if you have somebody who's only good at shaders and they're done with the shaders, they're just sitting around. Now, the bad thing about being a company is that somebody just sitting around still takes salary. And if they get sick, you still have to deal with that. If there's problems with them, you still have to deal with that. Now, I heard somebody say producer, and I'm really happy somebody said that. Flambria is 2 people. My studio is 2 people. You want to know what our titles are, what our roles are? So JW, my co-founder, is the creative director. And I'm the producer. Technically, I'm also the programmer. I also do HR. I also do marketing, and business, and other stuff. But my title is producer. And the reason we did that is because we needed very clear responsibilities for each of us. One person needs to be in charge of a thing. The thing needs to be very clearly defined. So when I say JW is the designer, it means that every creative decision that goes into the game is his responsibility. If I tell him we should do something and he does it and it's a bad decision, you know whose fault that is? His. because it didn't matter that I told him, he is responsible. If he makes a decision and I okay it, and it ends up taking 6 months, but we only have 3 to make it, whose fault is that? Mine, because I'm the producer, and it's my job to make sure the game releases on budget and on schedule, as well as we can. So, whenever you create a team, as small as possible, while fulfilling every role necessary. So if you need 2 artists is fine. Keep in mind your budget, keep in mind your schedule, and mostly, keep in mind that any person you do not need is burning your money. So a lot of games, a lot of students end up making their first game company based on a game jam. This might be true for all of you. And for some of you, you made a game this week with a team of 6 that is awesome, you'd like to keep working on it. And 3 of you really want to keep working on it, and 3 of you don't really care. Now here's my advice. Fire the 3 others. I'm not even kidding. Give them a deal. If you're going to make this a commercial thing, write a contract that defines what happens afterwards. But get rid of the 3 extra. Because if it works out, and now you're working on your second game, and you're with 6, so you need twice the budget to make the thing, then your second game might not work out. Well, if you were 3, maybe grow to 4, it might work out after all. How many of you are making a game that's going to take less than a year to make? Okay. Yeah, no, a game, like a commercial or release-ready game. Okay, less than a year. Okay? How long did it take you to get to the point where you are now? Weeks? Months? A year? If I come across a student that says their game is going to be done in a year, I hope they're past beta. Because just creating the store page is going to take you months. Finding the right screenshot is going to take you a shit ton of time. Getting the game ready and polished, do you have a main menu? A pause menu? Does your game save well? Does it load well? Does your game not crash? Are there no glitches in the main path of the game? No game-breaking bugs? Does it take screenshots the way Steam wants you to take screenshots? Do you know how that works? Have you worked with the Steam SDK yet? Are you creating for console? Have you ever seen certification? Or cert, or lot? TRC, like whatever they call it. They all have different names. Your game is probably, for what you're trying to do with the time you have, your game is probably way overscoped anyway. You probably just added things because you could. How many of you were making that game? How many of you were making like a big thing? Can you pitch it? Sorry? Hi. Hi. Can you give me the pitch? Okay. Anybody else that can give me their pitch? Anybody that wants to pitch their game? How many of you were working on a game again? There's only 6 people working on a game? It's okay. Kinda? Yeah? So nobody wants to pitch their work. One person wants to pitch their work. Okay, so one person wants to pitch their work after the 6th time I ask it. Okay? Thank you, though. You want to give it a try for real? Go.
Okay, our game is a bullet hell where you can, you manage to fight some bosses, and you have a mechanic where money and your life is the time you have.
So imagine this was a press pitch, right? You're the journalist. Okay, you are the journalist. How many of you could write an article about this? How many of you know what genre this is? Bullet hell? You remember that you said that? How many of you know the title of the game? Would be nice to mention in your pitch. Would be good. Release platforms? Is anybody excited for the game? Doesn't mean the game is bad. And so sorry for doing this. Really appreciate your pitch. Pitching is really hard. Pitching is not easy. Daring to pitch is really hard. Doing it in front of a guy on a stage who's just giving everybody shit is really brave. You know what the difference is between having done that and not having done that? Is he now knows he needs to improve his pitch. And he also knows how, because he tried. For all of the other people who are working on a game who didn't pitch, why the hell not? Why not? If you have a game idea in your head, why didn't you pitch it? I'm right here. This is one of the things I do. I give people feedback for pitches. Give people feedback for marketing. You had an opportunity to try and be better in 30 seconds. You let it go. Not going to take more, but after this talk, though, for sure. So for pitching, and I think, did you mention that in your talk, Patrice? We don't design for emotion or whatever. We design for sensation, for gameplay, for rules. What you communicate to your player, what you communicate to the people you want to say what your game is, you communicate what it does for them. But mostly what it does. It doesn't mean you have to say, like, it's a game about this. No, my pitch for Ridiculous Fishing is, it's a game about fishing with machine guns. That's the full pitch. How many of you are not thinking, what the fuck? Right? Have you played it? Yeah, that explains it. That's literally the pitch. I go to a journalist and I go like, yeah, I'm making a game about fishing with machine guns. And I go like, wait, what? And now I have an opportunity to talk. That's all I really want, is an opportunity to explain what I'm making. So, your game design. How many of you have watched The Art of Screen Shake? The talk. Okay. If you haven't, go watch it. If you have, who thought it was a really good talk? It's my co-founder, so I like seeing like 2 hands only. That's just me. Never mind that question. The talk, The Art of Screen Shake, what it's about is about juice. But what we mean with juice is feedback. So, if I say a platformer, what are the actions that really need feedback? Jump. What else? Run, walk. What else? Sorry? Camera, sure. Interact. I'm missing one really big one, people. No, not shoot, because platformer doesn't need guns. No? You said jump. Land, the opposite of jump. The most important thing in a platform is not whether you jump, it's whether you land. If you land in a hole, you're dead. So what's the most important thing in a platformer? The landing. So where do you put the feedback? The landing. The landing, you land hard, you make the character do a roll. You land nice, you make the character just immediately keep going. You jump, little cloud. You land, bigger cloud. You give feedback. You give feedback, but what you're thinking about is what is the desired player behavior? What is the result? What do I reward? What do I punish? How do I reward? How do I punish? This is very, very basic stuff that's really, really hard to get right, but so important. Because the difference between a game that does everything right but doesn't feedback and a game that does 90% wrong but feedbacks well is that people will still prefer the second one. Just because they know what they're supposed to do. Because they know what they're doing right. They know what they're doing wrong. Now, if you haven't watched The Art of Screen Shake, it is my co-founder. Go watch that talk anyway, right? It is a good talk. It explains you about feedback. It explains you what the difference is, and it actually comes with a playable demo of a game with different stages of feedback. So go watch that one. But also, you just said a bullet hell shooter in which time is money in life. How do you get money? Yeah. 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 Okay. Part of that on items, weapons, stuff like that. Now, you know what's cool about that? Is he already knows that that's the core of his game. That's it, right? That's the heart, is that balance between time and skill or ability. Yeah, meaningful choices there. If you're making a video, how many of you are making a video game? It's less and less every time I ask. It's really odd. Okay, can you give me like actually you in the pink, can you tell me in like one sentence, what are you trying to make? Just like the heart of the game. A party game with physics and explosions. So what is, in your team, what is the goal you're trying to reach with this game? They are pillows. Okay, that's fair enough. So for most of the games that we work on, I'll check that out. For the games we make, there's two types of pitches you have. You have the external pitch, which you just tried. There's the internal pitch, which I guess you just tried. The internal pitch is very much about what you want to achieve. It's your creative hypothesis. It's, can we do this with a game? For Ridiculous Fishing, the pitch is it's a game about fishing with machine guns. For Ridiculous Fishing, the internal statement, the nugget, the truth that we were trying to get at is, can we make a game that is an infinite, positive-only feedback loop? We wanted a game that was so accessible that if you took your iPhone and you downloaded the game and you played for the first time and you just smashed the iPhone into your face repeatedly, you could still buy the hat in the store that would teach you how that mechanic worked. If you suck at Ridiculous Fishing, you will never get stuck. If you're good at Ridiculous Fishing, you go through it faster. But whatever happened, the game works where you descend into the water dodging fish. As soon as you touch a fish or your line runs out, you go back up. And on the way back, you can catch as many fish as you want. Then when you hit the surface again, they fling all the fish up into the air, and then you grab your machine gun and you shoot them. And that gives you money. I don't know how fishing works. It's just... We called it Realistic Fishing Simulator, and they didn't like that. So, the thing is, descend, ascend, shoot, spend, right? Here's the thing. There is never a round of Ridiculous Fishing in which that cycle is not positive. Because you descend, the longer your line is, the better your items are, the deeper you can get. The deeper you can get, the more fish you can buy on the way, the more fish you can catch on the way back up. The more fish you catch on the way back up, the more fish you fling into the sky to shoot. The more fish you shoot in the sky, the more money you make, the more cool stuff you can buy that allows you to go deeper. Right? That cycle goes forever. There's never a break. That was what we were trying to make. Didn't have to be fish, didn't have to be machine guns, didn't have to be any of that. For some games, those things are a little closer. For some, they're a little more apart. But do you see how different those two are? The way we sell and the way we talk internally. If you do not have something like that in your studio, a nugget, the heart of the game, if you don't all agree about that, sit your team the fuck down and make sure you all agree about that sentence, about that little thing. Because this breaks studios. When people get different directions, different ideas about what you're trying to make, it doesn't work out. How many of you were going to sell games? Anybody have a business case beyond it's free to play? What's your business case? Okay. Okay. How many of you, for how many of you is the business case or the hopeful business case, I'm going to sell on Steam? Hey, good, because that's not a business case. That's a platform. That actually sounded remarkably much like a business plan to me. Like, it doesn't have the numbers, it doesn't have, you know, a lot of information I would need to know to guess whether it's a good business case. But no, creating something that shows value of something else, there's a case there. There's actually been thought about that. For most of you, I'm going to guess the business case for your future game is we're going to sell it, which is not a business case. So please, when you think about a business case, just Google this, like a game business case. Read up on it. Read up on how you sell this, how you pitch this, how you think about it. Keep track of the numbers, keep track of the markets, keep track of all of that. And then write your fucking business case, not the other way around. Well, I was going to tell you about how your art is shit, and your audio is shit, and your SFX is shit, but whatever. Marketing. What's the most important thing you're going to do in your marketing? There's one thing that is more important than everything else. What? The logo, pretty important. Also pretty important. Trailer, yeah. The place where you put your ads. Sorry? Targeting? It's good to have. Social media? No? Where do all of those places lead? All of what we just said, where do they go? Your store page. More than anything, your marketing could be the best if they get to the store and they look at it and they go like, eh. You're done. Because that's where the fucking button is. If they don't press it, you don't get a sale. Your store page. Now what's important about a store page? Well, literally everything you just said. Your logo, if your logo is not good, we're done. But Steam page doesn't show the logo all that big. Your trailer, super important. How many of you make their own trailers? How many of you are video editors? Oh, wow. How many of you are professional video editors that understand the pacing, the tempo, the audio, One of you, okay. Oh, two, you're there as well. Your screenshots, how much time do you take to make screenshots? You're gonna put six screenshots on that store. All right, that's pretty much how we do it. If you have less than 1,000 sitting in a folder, you're doing screenshots wrong. You know that in Vlambeer games, when we develop them, we actually have a tool running continuously taking screenshots. So that if something really cool happens, I can just go back and grab that one. Right? That's all. I need 6 screenshots that do not just tell me what the game looks like. I need them to tell you that you care about this game. That this is the game you want. That there's a story or a thing here that is exciting to you. You have 6 screenshots. That's all you have. You have nothing more. So if you don't do that, if you don't have those 1,000 screenshots sitting somewhere, you need to do better. Most people take screenshots in the last 2-3 weeks before they launch a game, especially for indies, and that's just not good enough. With how many games are launching, now more than ever, it is not good enough. Now there's one more thing I kind of want to talk about real quick. Do I have time? Yeah? Okay. How many of you make games outside of school? Yeah, that's good. Well done. Do that. How many of you are worried about how much work that is combined, school and making games on the side? How many of you do it anyway? How many of you think that is a good idea? Okay. There's 3 things you need to make video games. You need knowledge, right? You need to know how you make a video game. You need time. You need motivation, right? Here's the fun thing. Time is money, that kind of stuff. You can also call it money. If you don't have knowledge and motivation, but you have time or money, you don't care anyway. You don't have motivation, right? If you're not motivated, you don't do anything. That's just how humans work. Now, if you have motivation and money, can you make a game? Yeah, because you pay somebody who has the knowledge. If you have motivation and you have knowledge, but you don't have money, can you make a game? Well, you're all students, so I guess you don't have money. You're all still making video games. So yeah, can they be big? No, it might take a lot of time. You could spend 5 years making a game. You can make the next Stardew Valley by just working yourself to death for 5 years. But the thing I'm getting at is, without motivation, it doesn't matter how much of the other 2 you have, because it just won't fucking matter. You want to know how you lose motivation faster than anything else? It's called a burnout. I've had one. Worst 6 months of my life. And I got lucky because that's a short burnout. For 2 years, me and my co-founder worked day in, day out until we fell asleep in the office on like fucking bean bags or something. I missed the last train home more times than I care to admit. You know what? I was proud of that. I was proud because I was working hard. For 2 years, it went awesome because everything we did turned to gold. Super Crate Box, awards, spread around the world, hundreds of thousands of players still playing it. It was a huge hit for us, even though we didn't make money because it was freeware. We had done something that people gave a shit about. I've been trying to do that since I was 6 in some way or form, and I've never achieved it until back then. So we started working on our next thing, and everything went great, and then we started working on a game called Ridiculous Fishing. You know what happened? A studio in San Francisco saw an early prototype of it, decided to copy the prototype, updated the art, updated the audio, and released it on iPhone. And our goal for Ridiculous Fishing was to take our prototype, update the art, update the audio, fix the design a little, and release it on iPhone. And for the first time ever, something bad happened. And you know what happened? 2.5 years of working too much came crashing down on our backs. And I would wake up in the morning, and like I have done every day since I was 6, I would open up my computer to get to work. I would stare at the fucking cursor on my screen, and I'd get a headache. Not a small headache, like a fucking bad headache. Like a, you should close this computer right now headache. Now all of you are here listening to me talk at a school where you learn to make video games. Video games, a medium that really doesn't have enough jobs for all of us, that is super hard to get into, where people give you shit if you make a good game and people give you shit if you make a bad game, where people complain about your game being too expensive, where you read reviews about how somebody played your game for 500 hours and they give it a thumbs down. That's the medium you chose. You're all completely nuts. And so am I. I care for this medium. So you know what's scary? Realizing that there is a chance that I might not do this again because I pushed myself too hard. So if there's one thing I would really like to mention right now, is take care of yourself. If somebody pushes you to work harder than you can, tell them. Don't let them. Patricia, we have life. This is now, right? You have a thing you love doing. Protect that. Protect that love because it can break. Like every love, it breaks. If you push it too far, if you push it too hard, it breaks. Don't let it break. Protect that. So to go to a different subject, communication is really hard. I say that here standing on a stage talking about things. So let me give you an example. I'm going to tell you about a platformer. And this is an example that I use with students a lot. It's a platformer, okay? So what happens in a platformer? You go from A to B, right? Now I want you to ask me some questions about this platform. And if you've seen me do this little bit before, just skip out on it. Ask me questions about this platformer. Imagine I want you to make it. It's a platform. You look at it, there's a character, it moves from A to B. Walk? Walk. You can run, I guess. Yeah, you jump. I didn't say you don't jump. Many. Yeah, there's enemies. Yeah, there's enemies. Well, you want to play a platformer. I don't know yet. I haven't made it yet. I can't tell you. I mean, I'm making it, so I hope so. I think it's fun because it's pretty simple. Yeah, it's pretty simple. It's not a very hard game. I guess there's some difficult challenges, but it's easy to play. game development? Do any of these questions help you figure out what game I'm trying to make? Okay. I'll leave that to guess for you. What? It's not very different. Everybody knows this game. Let's just say we're going to switch to I'm using a platform that already exists. Okay? Platform already exists because it's a classic. Pretty Miyamoto. Pretty Miyamoto. What game are we talking about? Which one? Any Super Mario? Yeah, but you can't make any Super Mario. You have to pick one Super Mario. Which one is it? Here's the fun thing. I could answer all of these questions and none of you would have any goddamn idea which Mario I'm talking about. I do this exercise with students because that 2D, 3D question, that never gets asked. It's really fun to have students make a 3D game for a week and then tell them they got it wrong. Words are really bad. Words are the worst for communicating. How do you communicate with an artist? You want to know how you should communicate with an artist, probably? Sketch it. Just sketch it. Just make a shitty drawing. I'm not a good drawer. If I draw a cow, I draw a circle with another circle and 4 fucking legs under it, and I put an arrow above it that says cow. That's the best I can do. My audio designer, if I say I don't say like I need a little bit more rumble in this explosion. I just go like, yeah, the sound is like, and I went like, it sounds silly, but you know what? He never gets it wrong. Because if I say more rumble, that could mean 100 million things. With feedback, if somebody tells you the boss is too difficult, how do you fix it? You know, one possible fix is put a health pack before the room. Or give the player better weapons, or make the boss less strong, or make the player faster, or communicate the patterns better. You know what the boss is too hard is? It's just feedback that that player found that boss too hard. Doesn't tell you anything else. The problem with words is that we've been taught that we mean the same thing when we hear the same word. For all of our life, this is what we've been taught. The reality is we don't. A fun exercise. Sun, the word sun, okay? Gonna ask you to tell me the first word that you think of when I say the word sun, right? Okay, you. Star? Okay, anybody else had star? 0? You? Yeah? The word sun, what word do you think of? Any word. Yeah. The sun, yeah. Hot. Who else had hot? 6, 7 people? Yeah. Anybody else had a really good one that they think a lot of people in this room have? Bright? How many had bright? 6 or 7? Anybody else? Moon? Who else had moon? 6 or 7? What? Day. Day? 2? I think Egypt. Anybody had Egypt? 1 person had Egypt? Fun. We don't agree about the word sun. It's a big fucking ball of lava in the fucking sky. We all see it every day. It's not lava, I know. And we don't even agree about that. You think that we agree about what the word platformer means? Fuck no. Action, good feel, jump. You think we agree about what those words mean? Of course not. That's why I don't communicate using those. You communicate by showing. You talk in the medium that you're working in. So if you're talking about games, you prototype. You're talking about art, you draw. You talk about audio, you make fucking sounds. That's how you make games. You want to talk about programming? Draw a fucking flowchart. Talk in code. So, for a game, one thing you need is a strong vision, a goal. You want to know what else? What the fuck is a vision? There's no such thing as a vision. A game is an idea that we're trying to communicate through a computer. We're training a computer, a device that only understands zeros and ones, to have a conversation with a player on our behalf, and we're not there. This is not easy. We've picked one of the hardest hardest jobs. You know what game development is? It's just problem solving. Create a thing, fix the fucking problem. Patrice just told me something that I'm never going to forget. You know what game development is? You are both a firefighter and a pyromaniac at the same time. You make a fire, shit burns, you go like, wow, that's oh shit, that building, like, oh fuck, let's fucking fix it. That's game development. It's just problem solving. You create a mechanic, you see how it breaks, you fix that. You fix that mechanic, it doesn't communicate well anymore, you fix that. We've picked one of the hardest jobs in the world because it's just continuous problem solving. Now, what I'm really trying to say is schooling on itself, that's going to be enough for you. So, I need you to do more outside of school while taking good care of yourself. What is the most important thing that you can be good at in this industry? If there's any takeaway today, it's this. What do you think? Is it that you're good at your job? Who thinks it's being good at their job? Thankfully, none of you. Here's the thing. Being good at your job is just the fucking baseline. If you're not good at your job, it doesn't matter. So being good at your job is not what sets you apart. Who has another idea what it is that you should be good at when you make games? Doing your job? Yeah, that's also the baseline, because if you don't do that, you're fired. Talking? That's pretty close, yeah? I'd rather have people do it good than fast. But liking it? I hate my job sometimes. Learning from other people, that helps. That's teamwork. Communicating, teamwork. The most important thing in this industry is being able to work with others, because there is barely anybody in this industry who can do all of it. So here's the thing. The people that do best in this industry are not the people that are really good at it. It is people that are really good at making things together. Because there is no game that gets made by one person. Sure, you might think of a game that had one developer on it, but even that person got their inspiration, their knowledge, their history, all of that from other people. There's nobody who just walks into games and makes a game. No, be good to work with. Make that your focus. If you leave this school, be good at what you do, but be good at working with others as well. Be good at working with others more than you are good at your job, because if you are good to work with, studios will hire you and train you because you are good to work with. Because honestly, a good programmer, I can find fucking millions of them. It's one of the jobs in which most people are looking to graduate nowadays, is programming, because it's such a big part of the world. I can find hundreds of thousands of programmers, no problem. A programmer that is that's good at their job, that communicates well, that is a team player, that takes care of other people in the team, that doesn't just work to make the game as good as possible, but that works to make the team as good as possible, those are fucking rare. That one I will hire. Somebody who brings something to the team that is more than just code. Because I can hire any programmer for code. That's not that hard. While you are here at school, how many years do you have left? 1, 2, 3? 1 month, and then you're done with the entire thing? Yeah. Good luck. Define yourself. Define you. People will tell you that your portfolio has to be wide, that it has to include different things. You know what a portfolio should be? It should be a reflection of who you want to be in this industry. Not that you're good at everything. No, include that. Include what you're good at. But mostly, for your portfolio, include the one thing that you really want to be. You want to be a character artist? Show how good you are at character art. 90% of your portfolio should be that. You want to be a programmer? Put prototypes, put code examples, put little shader demos, put all of that. Put that out there. You want to be an independent developer? Show finished games. That's it. That's what being an indie is about. Making a game and fucking finishing it. And finally, know more about everything. Again, I'm going to use Patrice as an example, even though he ran away by now. Patrice's games are games, but they're not just about games. They're always about something more. His knowledge of history is so big that when we met yesterday, well, we met before, but when we ran into each other yesterday, he told me more about the history of my country than I knew. Because he studied it, because he cares. I was super embarrassed, and now I'm reading the history of the Netherlands. It's a thing. But knowledge is a huge part of what we do, and not just games knowledge. We all have knowledge about video games. We all know when we see a broken wall in the corner of a Zelda that you put a fucking bomb there because it will blow up the wall and there's a treasure behind it. We know that. That's not exceptional knowledge. No, find knowledge of something else. What are your hobbies? Research them. What is your history? Research it. What is your country's history? Research it. What is the history of the countries around you? Research it. Your favorite medium? Research it. Learn and do things that aren't the things you already do. If you've never been skydiving, go fucking skydiving. If you could. It's scary. It's fun. But do things you wouldn't do otherwise, because this is one of the ways, one of the easiest ways that you can become a better game developer. I think I'm just going to leave it there. I think that's a good place to stop. Thank you so much. So, I've been told that there is no time to do questions because I kept talking for too long. This is a problem I have sometimes. If any of you have any questions, and it's funny because I even make slides for questions, but we're just going to... this is me. Find me on Twitter. My DMs are open. Send me any question you have, any prototype you have. I can't promise that I will play all of them. I can't promise that I will answer all of them.